Okay, today we're going to start talking about derivatives, and we're going to be using limits today to describe derivatives. Okay, so what is a derivative? It measures the steepness of a graph of a function at some particular point on the graph, which is the slope. We need to know what a tangent line is. A tangent line is a straight line that only touches at one point on a graph. Okay, so you can see here, if I want the slope specifically right here, that's the tangent line. Okay, you can see if I wanted the slope at -1, right, I would put a point there, and this would be the slope. Okay, so you can see that this would have a negative slope, this would have a positive slope. I can see if I wanted the slope right at 0 in my tangent line, the slope would be 0. Obviously, as I go upward, your slope is steeper, right, than here. It's always changing everywhere in your curve. Okay, so what do we know about slope from the past? We know slope is the rise over the run. The rise is the difference in the heights of 2 points, and the run is the difference of the x's of 2 points. Okay, so how does this connect to limits? So what we're going to basically doing, so if we want the slope of this specific tangent line, we would essentially say we're going to take it of 2 points. I'm going to draw a separate graph over here. So for instance, that slope, right? And then we're going to make this point, we want this point to get closer and closer and closer to that original point. Because as this point gets closer to that point, it's more accurately displaying the slope at the tangent. Okay, so this slope would be more accurate than that slope because these points are closer together. Okay, so when we do this, you're going to have point 1 that's going to be x comma f of x, and point 2 is going to be a little bit away from x, and then obviously that will change the corresponding y value. Okay, so this means that my second point is a little bit away from that point. That's what it means. Okay, so in our case we could say point 1 is x comma 3x squared, and point 2 is x plus h comma 3x plus h squared. Okay, this would be the general way. I'm going to show you 2 ways. That's the general way. And if we did it with the value we were given, because we said at x equals 4, okay, so then our point 1 would be 4 comma, what's 3 times 4 squared? That would be 48. So that's point 1. Point 2 would be 4 plus h, comma 3, 4 plus h squared.
Mommy,
so this would be that I inputted the x.
Mommy, what's your pencil get out?
The red. Okay. So now,
Mommy, that doesn't help.
Now we are going to use limits to figure this out, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out this as our h approaches 0, which means as our distance between the 2 points, as it gets closer and closer and closer and closer, and that distance, we want that distance between them to be 0, because if there's distance between the 2 points is 0, that means it is just a point and we have an official tangent line. Okay, so the limit as h approaches 0. Okay, I'm going to do the general method and the inputted method. So the general would be 3 okay, so that's my y2 minus y1 over x x2 minus x1. Okay, so if I FOIL this all out, okay, you can see that I would get 3x squared plus 6xh plus 3h squared minus 3x squared all over h. And I still have wanting to understand as the limit of it as x approaches h approaches 0. Okay, can't plug that in obviously because it creates a 0 on the bottom. Okay, so I'm going to cancel that out. So the limit as h approaches 0 of 6xh plus 3h squared over h. Now I can factor out an h. So 6x plus 3h over h and cancel. So the limit as h approaches 0 of 6x plus 3h. Now I can officially plug that 0 in. So if I plug the 0 in, I would have 6x plus 0. So that would be the general. But I specifically wanted to know at 4. So now when you do the general, you can input 4. So 6 times 4 equals 24. So the slope of that would be 24. Okay, now I'll show you. So this is when I inputted 4 at the end. Now I'll do it when I've already inputted 4 at the beginning. So the limit as h approaches 0, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so if I FOIL this out, I'm just going to do it above 16 plus 8h plus h squared, and I still have to times it by 3. So timesing it by 3 is 48 plus 24h plus 3h squared minus 48. That bottom piece is always going to end up being h. Okay, if you think about when we're doing this, minuses, it's always going to cancel off those x's. So I am okay with you just inserting the h right away because it is always going to happen. Okay, those 48's cancel. The limit is h approaches 0 of 24h.
Mommy, I did h 2 times.
Okay, I can factor an h out. So I still need this limit piece in front, right? Because I haven't actually applied the limit yet. Cancel those out. So the limit as h approaches 0. Okay, I'm about to put my limit in. So as h approaches 0, 24 plus 0 ends up being 24. So you can see how our answers match. Okay, so we are going to do another example of this. Okay, so this doesn't have any specific x values, so we're just going to do the general. So point 1 is x comma 24 over x. Point 2 is x plus h 24 over x plus h. Okay, so my slope, I'm going to figure the limit is h approaches 0, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so what's the strategy here? Here I want to get over the same denominator. So I'm going to times this first one by an x, and I'm going to times the second one by an x plus h all over x plus h times x. Okay, then that is all over, and again, this will always happen. Your x's will cancel over h. Okay, so just over here, I'm just going to show you that that would distribute, right? Okay, so limit as h approaches 0, 24x minus 24 24x minus 24h. Okay, so now that will happen. And then I get negative 24h over. Instead of dividing by h, I'm actually just going to go times a 1 over h. You can understand that it's the same thing. Okay, so now I can cancel those h's off. The limit as h approaches 0 of negative 24 over x plus h times x. And I am ready to insert my 0. Okay, so if this is 0, the bottom would become x squared. So my final answer.
Mommy, the headers keep moving in my face.
That's my final answer, negative 24 over x squared. Okay, next one. Here's my point 1. X comma 18 root x. Point 2 is x plus h. 18 root x plus h. Okay, so my limit as h approaches 0 of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, so now I have to think about what my strategy might be on this one. So we've worked with radicals before, so I'm going to do multiplying by the conjugate. So you've heard that before. So it's going to look like this. Same thing except for with a plus. I know that those x's were gone, so that's just an h. Oops, didn't mean to put that bracket there. Okay, so that's the conjugate. So when we multiply by the conjugate, we understand when we're doing our foiling system, our f, when we do our O and our I, those cancel. Okay, so I'm ready to foil it, but really I'm just kind of flowing it. I don't need to do the O and the I piece. Okay, so 18 times 18 is 324. And the radicals will cancel. Minus, so the last times the last is a negative 324x. And I'm actually not even going to do anything with the bottom to simplify it. Okay, now I'm going to FOIL or distribute right there. 324x plus 324h. Okay, these will cancel. So you've noticed that at this stage I've always written this step and the next one I'm going to do in two pieces. I can't cancel that and that at the same time. I know that it will come out to the same result, but mathematically you wouldn't be able to cancel that h until those other terms are gone. So now I've canceled off those x's, now I can also cancel out those. So the limit as h approaches 0, and I've simplified the equation and changed it. Now I'm ready to insert the 0 into the h. Okay, so this would be 18 root x plus another 18 root x on the bottom. So the limit, I've already applied the limit now, so I can write it as 324 over 36 root x. So I put those together. And then 324 divided by 36 is 9. So there's my final answer. Okay. So find the derivative using the definition. So here we go. The limit as h approaches 0, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So I'm going to use the strategy of common denominator. So I'm going to use x times an x plus h as my denominator there. And then that bottom is just h. So I'm actually going to change it to a times by 1 over h instead of dividing. Okay, I'm going to distribute some stuff here. I'm going to not touch the bottom. That will cancel. The h's will now cancel. Okay, I'm ready to plug the 0 in. So the bottom would become x squared if that was a 0. So there's my final answer. Okay, so here, since we just practiced a few with the general, why don't I use the actual numbers inputted. So again, you can do this general and then input your answer for x at the very end, or you could input your x at the start. Doesn't matter. Okay, so 5, the next x would be 5 plus h. 5 squared times 7, what's 5 times? 175. And then this would be 7, 5 plus h squared. Okay. So here we go. Limit as h approaches 0. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Okay, I'm just going to write this binomial squared over top. 25 plus 10h plus h squared. Okay, times it by 7. So we get 175 plus 70h plus 7h squared. Those will cancel. I need to rewrite because I can't cancel the h's in the same step. Now I'm going to factor out an h. Now I can cancel. And I'm ready to plug the 0 in. So as I plug that 0 in, 70 plus 0, my answer is 70. Okay, find this. So it actually already gave me, not just my x, it gave me my x and my y. So let's do the points. So y2, that's my y2, minus y1. So it gave me my coordinates. Over, and are we okay to say h? Okay, we know that that always happened, no matter what. Okay, the limit as h approaches 0. Okay, so I'm going to do a conjugate multiplication. Okay, so this is going to become 36, 4 plus h. And again, I'm just flowing because the O and the I cancel, minus 144. And I'm going to not touch the bottom. I'm going to leave as is. Okay, so this is going to be 36 times 4. I'm hoping that's 144 so that they cancel. And then just leave the bottom. We will work with it after. So those cancel. And now I'm going to also cancel those factored out h's. Okay, so the limit as h approaches 0, I'm getting ready to input my 0 now. Okay, so I'm inputting my 0. So what is this value? So 6 times 2 plus 12 is what I'm doing. So that's 24. And then if I did want to reduce it, that would divide by 12, so 3/2.